A very good evening and many thanks for tuning in to Y254 TV. It's the 24th of the month of September 2018. A discussion Monday tonight on political scope. We shall be looking at the 2018 budget law that was signed in by the president on Friday. We want to understand what did the this bill contain, because many of the Kenyans are confused. What does it have and what's the future of Kenyans? With me in studio is Evans Soite, is a lawyer, and I also have Mariga Wangombe. They will be helping us to understand more about this topic. Keep it Y254. Remember, you can join our conversation tonight by sending us your comments or questions to 22162 is the SMS line to use. Remember to start with the word Y News. Again, 22162 is the SMS line to use. Remember to start with the word Y News. At Murani Hillary at Y254 channel is the Twitter handle to use. Hashtag Y254 updates. However, we begin our program with the latest what has happened this very day. My name is Dereva Hillary. Welcome to the program. Now, Migori Governor Okoth Obado pleaded not guilty of the murder of university student Sharon Otieno. The court ruled that he be remanded at Industrial Area Government Prison in Nairobi. Justice Jesse Lesit has also ruled that Governor Okoth Obado's bail application be heard tomorrow at 2 p.m. Well, there you have it. That is what one of the things that have hit the headlines this day. We now move to our conversation tonight. We want to understand what does this bill of the 2018 budget bill entail. And President Uhuru Kenyatta, gentlemen, signed into bill this financial bill of 2018-2019 under what many would say are controversial circumstances, and many Kenyans are not proud. Actually, the problem we have with the Kenyans, many Kenyans rather, they don't understand what does this bill entail. And I want to begin with you, Evans, as a lawyer. Break down at least a few things of what we should understand about this 2018-2019 financial bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Normally, as you've said, it was controversial because also that sets a very bad precedent, what happened in Parliament that day. But the thing we're supposed to understand, the introduction of some new taxes that are coming in. I will start with the one that will bite common mwananchi, is the presumptive tax. That thing was, the tax was there before. It came into play in the year 2007. It was called the turnover tax. Right. But because of the political situation at that time, it was never implemented. Right. And even another thing that comes out very loudly in this Financial Act 2018, because it has already been signed, is most of the new introductions. They're saying we will issue guidelines unto it. Now, let me talk about the presumptive tax as one of the new things. As I said, it was called presumptive, and it was called TOT previously. Yeah. So look at it from the perspective of the Big Four agenda. What the government is trying to do, because it has very ambitious projects going on, what it has tried to do is to now collect more taxes, because if you're doing something ambitious, you have to have the funding for it. Sure. We have to also, while I'm saying this, we have to put in our mind that there's the issue of we still have debt from China. We have debt. So the presumptive tax goes to the common mwananchi, down to those entities that are not registered. For example, the Kinyozi person or the Mama Mboga, you see, they are registered or they're not officially registered, because some of them might not have even pins. So what they've done is they say that to those people who their yearly turnover is below 500,000, still will come to you to get some money from you. And how will that be implemented? Again, as I said, the CS for Treasury said they will put gazettements out there on the guidelines on how that will be done. But the best thing that they're going to do about it, I think, where the government is ambitious about it, they will levy it on your compliance certificates. For example, when you're going to Kanju will, Nairobi Council, County Council, it will be like now at an agent of KRA. So that's when they will levy the 15%. If you're paying 50,000, you'll be paying 75,000 shillings.
All right, we'll be getting into details to more of that. I want to come to you, Mariga. As a Kenyan for the last close to 3 weeks now, we have felt the pinch of traveling, commuting from one place to the other, and this is what the Kenyans are crying most about. We haven't felt other areas, which hopefully we will, because we don't have a choice right now. But for the past 3 weeks, how has it been on you?
There's been an increase in the cost of transportation everywhere, which is extremely amusing because the finance bill hadn't been passed. So let me even say it was an illegal increase in the cost of fuel, which I believe you could legally sue for. Yeah. There was no the finance CS implemented the finance bill without it being passed by Parliament, which is absurd because there's a clear distinction between the role of the executive and role of the legislature. Now, he did not have the authority to increase it in the first place. So one, you've had 3 weeks of increased transport, which is illegal to begin with, and I honestly, if I was a lawyer, I would sue. Because the citizens do determine in the first place, but two, the cost of a lot of things has gone up. The cost of transport literally affects every single thing in the economy. One of the most amusing things I heard from Leader of Majority Aden Duale is that after the law was passed, they would calculate the cost of the increase to common commodities, and I've not heard something like that in a very long time. He had no idea about because he was asked about it, about the actual impact of the bill on the cost of living, and he had no idea. His actual words that he calculated after the bill was passed. People's lives already increased. An increase in 10 or 20 shillings in transport fare would directly impact the cost of food and everything else. Cost of transportation of products, depending on the place that you live. Because remember, the increase in the tax meant that some petrol prices went up to 130, Bob?
Yeah, that time, yeah.
But that's in Nairobi. I think one of the things we need to understand is that not everywhere is in Nairobi, because far-flung Northeastern had the fares increased to 100 and the fuel increased to 147. It was 17 shillings above Nairobi. And this is hurting every single person.
True.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Increasing the price on petroleum products caused inflation to so many things, because the movement of goods from one place to the other, even people from movement of labor from one place to the other increased. But there's also this one thing. Speak of the phone calls. We will now have an increased charge. We already complain of the few shillings we pay for a call, for a phone call, that is, and now it will be increased. How much do you think that will pinch a person or a common citizen who buys credit of small denominations?
Okay, I think I'd lump that in too, especially because the increase would have the increase in the cost of mobile, basically credit, but also increase in price of internet. Now, to a common household, to a good portion of people, that's an actual percentage of an income. People use up to 10% of their income on credit.
Yes.
That's a substantial increase, and I don't think people who earn $1 million, Bob, do not know the impact. And I am calling to the members of Parliament, because amusingly, is that the members of Parliament, while claiming to vote no on taxation, one of the other things that there's been two aspects to this is that one, there's taxation, but two, there's austerity. I think that's another aspect which has been underplayed. Now, part of the austerity has been a reduction in a lot of the ministry's projects.
Right.
Now, the only department or part of the government to benefit from it is the judiciary, because in the budgetary alignment, there's an increase in the amount allocated for the judiciary.
Right.
But for everybody else, it's reduced drastically. Reducing drastically, one of the most amusing things is when they reduced the budget and discussing austerity, Parliament declined the reduction of their own austerity.
Right.
They said that they need a lot more done, which I laughed, because you can't do it. And so everyone's lives is going to be impacted very heavily, because the change in the finance bill had 5 significant sections. The VAT one was the hardest hit for most ordinary Kenyans, because that's what they can connect with.
Right.
But see, apart from the VAT, we also had the increase in we had introduction of a housing levy, right, which would be at 1.5%. From your part, 1.5% to your employer to a maximum of 5,000 shillings.
Right.
There was an increase in the cost of internet, increase in cost of phones.
And that touches the youth most because we love internet so far.
Yes.
And we use internet. Okay, speak of looking for jobs.
Yes.
Speak of entertainment. We're using internet every other day. And I'm sure here the youths have been most affected. Do we have a future really in this?
If I may.
Yes, please.
The issue, the way Mariga's put it very clearly, one thing is, as you say, people who are buying credit, small denomination, you know, the common mwananchi like me,
Right.
you will still say, I've bought credit for 20 bob and I'll not know the impact. But the thing is, even these companies are going to cushion themselves. For example, if you're going to get credit for 20 shillings, which let's say it was 5 minutes previously,
Yeah.
you'll still get that credit for 20 shillings, but it will be maybe 2 minutes. So you see that is the issue. And when, from a government perspective, let me say, I'm not a guy from the government though,
Right, yeah.
they seem to, they are very ambitious about this, which is a good thing for every government to transform the nation.
Yeah.
So they say that we want to offer these services to you. The way he has said, we want to give you as a civil servant and any other person in this country,
Right.
we want to give you at some point to access affordable housing.
Yeah.
We want at some point to access good roads. That's why the fuel, there's VAT on fuel and stuff.
Yeah.
But the issue is, are we really implementing this? Now look at it from the perspective of the common mwananchi.
Right.
The common mwananchi will complain, and I will complain, first of all, in the sense that, are we really dealing with the real issues?
Right.
If you want to have an ambitious project, you have to have good guidelines. Look at the Finance Act 2018. Most of it they're saying, as much as the others are starting as early as 1st of July 2018, 1st of October, January 1st.
Right.
But they're still insisting on those in the act that guidelines will be gazetted by the CS on this. Do we have a plan? And those are red flags, whereby people will just do it at their own will. Now, to answer your question to the cost of the common, you see, more money is being taken out of our pockets and no money coming in. The cost of business, even doing business in Kenya, is going up. So it will be very hard. It will be very hard. And again, as much as these opportunities are being created, sincerely, we can give details about the rate of unemployment in this country, and it is appealing. I think that's what I can say for this time.
Now, let's talk about money transfer, because most of the people don't understand who will be being taxed and just how much. Because for 500 shillings you want to send, you'll be charged roughly to 55 shillings. Now, are we looking at people who transact a lot of money, or it's just everyone who is transacting via this money banking, or even the ATMs?
The Robin Hood tax looked much higher. It wasn't looking at the common man for, I dislike the use of the word, but there's nothing else I can find appropriate.
Wanjiku.
Yes, Wanjiku, but it aimed at much higher bank transactions. The one bigger problem is there's there was ambiguity in the act as to exactly what transfer of money meant.
Yeah.
Because I think, as I remember it correctly, it has been suspended by the court, that specific part, until the Treasury had 14 days to issue directives on exactly what the definition is, because they aim higher. So that's a part of the problem, but I think it's a smaller part of the problem.
Yeah.
The bigger problem is how does it impact our daily lives? Because my other question is why we had to do this in the first place.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things for people have been talking about constitutionalism. One of the biggest narratives for the past week or 2 or 3 has been that Uhuru is only increasing tax because he inherited a very big government because of the constitution, which is absurd. Parliament and company only account for 30 billion a year. Our fiscal deficit is significantly higher at 700 billion. And a lot of these things are to do with money management. When one of the conditions and one of the reasons why we had to implement it by this specific point was because of the IMF. We have access to 100 billion in the IMF precautionary fund. One of the things that we took a loan in 2012 to hedge ourselves. because otherwise we'd have to rely on our foreign reserves.
Right.
Foreign reserves would have to be equal to 4% of our export value. We haven't paid it for a very long time. They've threatened to cut it off unless we implement, one, increase in taxation, but two, reduce in expenditure. So we were forced, our hand was forced into it.
Yeah.
And now the other catch about the way we're using our money is look at an example of Malawi in 2011. The IMF completely pulled its precautionary figures, and that had an impact on people's daily lives.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with the amount of money. And quoting the economist Kwame Wino, this is not a today problem, because the problem is that we lose a third, and a third is a modest estimate of our budget to corruption.
Yeah. Actually, a few days ago, I was looking into that, the agreement between Kenya and IMF, and we had that case study of Malawi during Ebola, and then it happened also to Ghana and Indonesia during because of banking issues. Now, we are Kenyans, and they were specific if you want us to continue supporting your people, or for us to have a regulation on how much we are borrowing and how we're using our funds. They advised on petroleum. Now, I'm coming to you, Evans, on this issue of money transfer and fares. I want us to look at our grandparents back home. The fare has been increased.
Yes.
And we know when it comes to December, many people say, I'm not going home. I'd rather send this money to my family back in Shago because it's too much. Now, we are a few months to December already. So the fares will hike more than they have hiked right now. Also, the money transfer, maybe it will have been implemented. We don't know how the case will be, the outcome. We don't know the results yet. But still, look at this person who wants to send money home. He's in Nairobi or he's in another city away from home, and they want to send money or travel. Now, which is which? How do we balance? We will now look at going home and sending money. Which one is cheapest? And even if I went home, I'll still go with money that I'm finding it hard to find. Now, is there an alternative in this case, Evans?
You see, the thing is, we have a representative in parliament who, I think, if I may go back to what happened.
But they are not independent.
What happened recently? Wanasema chama ni ya nani na nani. So let me just give a background of it a little bit.
Right.
Like today, if you listen to the deputy president talking at the national, at the Jubilee Party National Delegates Conference, the special meeting, they made resolutions about several things. And then what he was hitting at home is hatutaki kusikia ile siasa propaganda ya wale watu wanataka kututoa kwa njia ambayo tunaenda. But we are happy that one, we are very ambitious, but a government that taxes more its citizens, and the citizens don't see the outcomes, or there's a perception, not even a perception, there are indication that there's corruption happening. If you look at the Transparency International Index about corruption in Kenya, it's something that will it will just kill you.
Yeah.
Before we came in here, we were talking about how we are not angry enough, and how we don't understand the difference between 1 billion and 100 billion. You know, people are walking away with 9 billion. And then they have another season of it, they walk out with more money. Now, to just answer your question is, one thing is for sure, kila mtu anasema maisha ni ngumu.
True.
Now, hata vile maisha ni ngumu bado itabidi be part of the people who are implementing the Big Four agenda. You have no option. That is not only his legacy, the president, but your legacy, because it applies to you directly.
True.
So money transfers, what basically is being targeted by the banks, and the way he has said it was suspended. 500, that band of 500, they were saying that it will be 0.05%. And you see, we have to fund the Big Four agenda. So it will be very hard. It will be very hard for people to travel. Yeah. It will be more expensive for people to travel then. True. It will be more even expensive now for people. You know, sometimes people don't travel because it's expensive. Yeah. Now again, it means the amount that they will be sending back home, it will be reduced. Yes.
I want us to touch now on the Big Four agenda, because one of the areas has been touched on. This is part of the housing. We saw even the new police reforms that were just formulated the other day, there was part of housing, and still the government is ambitious on housing. And now there will be around 1.5 rate how much these people will be remitting to the government, and there an amount that is speculated. If you're earning 160,000 and above, maybe you could be remitting around 250. Now, how does that figure, or how does that amount help someone or a poor person? Maybe speak of the slums, because these are some of the people that we're looking forward to improve their lives.
Yes. One of the biggest problems with some of the situation is, what is affordable housing?
Yeah.
We've dallied around this term as if it actually means something. There's absolutely no government definition of affordable housing. There is, we're remitting 1.5% of our salaries, and employers matching 1.5% of our salaries to go to the housing fund.
Yeah.
The housing fund hasn't been established.
So this money will go to the pockets?
Yes, there's no fund that's been established. There's no one it's accountable to. There's no way we can audit it. And going by government records, they failed. I remember one of the things people call affordable housing projects was the Nyayo Estate project.
Yeah.
Houses went for 4 to 6 million.
Yeah.
What do people think Kenyans earn? I'm amused.
Yeah.
Because when I was looking at the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics study in 2018, the cost of living index, was that in the last financial year, the salaries of formally employed workers increased by 3,200 shillings, so about 57,000 shillings per month. That's formally employed workers. But when you adjust this for the cost of inflation, it reduced.
Yeah.
Their salaries
How
reduced
funny.
by 1,500 shillings. And so you have a reduced income already to begin with, minus anything else. Then we started introducing these laws. And there's a power of narrative, because when the president came and he said he reduced the bill from 16% to 8%, that's deceptive.
Yeah.
The tax didn't exist. You cannot reduce tax that did not exist. As long as it hadn't been passed by parliament, it hadn't existed. He just means he introduced.
You can't give us a
Yeah, and to
discount
begin
on
with, it
something
was
that is
the
not there.
Treasury who enacted it before it was passed by the parliament. So
Yes.
actually it existed in the words,
Yes.
Yes.
and people were taxed. And then here comes now reducing to 8%, and many people said initially there was no tax. They said petroleum products, it was 0. Now it is 8. So it was made to believe that it was 16, but now it's 16.
Yes,
So how true is that actually?
On this one significant thing we've left out, kerosene.
Yeah.
We've left
It's
out
now 100.
kerosene.
Actually, it has made history in Kenya. For the first time, kerosene is at par with diesel.
Yes, because the absurdity of the argument, again, by Treasury CS I'd have to give him props. You'd have to have a lot of courage to say that out loud. That you are increasing the cost of one to avoid adulteration with the other. You do not increase tax if you cannot enforce something.
Yeah.
You can't. That is not a significant aspect, because one, petrol consumption is more than diesel consumption by about 2 to 1 countrywide. Now, diesel consumption is significantly more than kerosene consumption, but one of the arguments was that they would increase. I was looking at a 2016 push by the ERC to have us go green, right? That was an interesting argument. One of the Go Green articles was that they wanted to phase out kerosene and instead introduce affordable gas cylinders.
Yeah.
Now it's something we haven't heard of in 2.5 years, because what they claimed was that they would give gas cylinders at 70% of the cost of the retail price.
Right.
But one, there's no reduction in the cost of the actual gas, and two, it wouldn't be implemented. So one, apart from a 16% increase, apart from an 8% increase in VAT, commonly, every single person using kerosene, and kerosene is not for motor vehicles, kerosene is for home consumption.
True.
So kerosene is for basic functions. It's for eating and for seeing in the house. That's it.
And we can tell who normally uses that.
Majority of Kenya uses kerosene. How do you increase it for the protection of diesel vendors?
Yeah.
Diesel vendors they're doing it themselves to begin with.
Yeah.
You cannot deal with your inability to regulate that by taxing every single per person.
Very true.
Yes.
Now, Evans, I want to come to you now with this angle. in terms of law,
Yes.
this bill has been enacted now by the signing of the president. Actually, it has been gazetted now.
Yeah.
How do we move forward? Because we have to contribute to the Big Four agenda. Now, in terms of law, and this case in court, what are we looking at right now?
One thing about the process of enacting a law, as you saw it, right now I think it has become something else where Parliament, you see, I think people, if I may talk about Parliament in a few, people are so concerned about 2022 than the real issues that are affecting Mwananchi. Because even if you see the drama that was happening in Parliament, I think it's an orchestra. It was planned. Yeah, it was planned. Anyway, now when we talk matters law, the moment the president has put a signature on it, it becomes law. And ignorance of the law, sad to say, maybe ignorance is a very tough word, but most of us don't know what the details. The devil is in the details in that law. And that's why you see people saying the individuals like Okiya Mtata is going to defend us. But the thing is, there are some things that go against the constitution in there.
Right.
And there's no law that is supreme than the constitution. We cannot claim that we're trying to do one good by doing another thing that is wrong. The way he has talked about alteration of kerosene. It is simple. Be able to have systems that people will comply with. That is part of the law. Regulate, because now a person who comes from where I come from, he's struggling to buy fuel, kerosene. Him is doing it with a good heart, but because you cannot control those other people. That's why some people say this is a mafia state, a bandit economy. So you put the burden on this other person who is trying to do everything under the law legally, by imposing on them problems that you cannot handle yourself.
True.
So I know there are some cases that are going to come up because of the implementation of the act. For example, the housing levy. The thing is, even the stakeholders don't understand. They don't understand what you're taxing. Why am I paying for this?
Kenyans.
I'm paying for this house. What if I don't need that house?
Not only need that house,
Yes.
most Kenyans who are being taxed can barely afford. They can't even afford to build their own houses.
Yes.
So
How will it benefit me at the end of the day?
True.
Yes.
Actually, we are out of time, and I need your final comments. Let me begin with you, Mariga, very fast. Your very final comments on this issue.
My final comment is that I would encourage anyone who would have the ability to go to court and challenge this. Challenge this on two fronts. One, the way it was passed in Parliament was a farce. You could challenge the entire process. Number two, even before that, you could challenge the fact that the president, I think I was reading back at Article 15, has the ability to offer reservations about a bill, and that's what he did to the finance bill. He offered it back. But what he did was not reservations. He drafted legislation. Because when president drafts 5 amendments to it, the president does not have the authority to draft legislation. Parliament should not have accepted it, and I would encourage anyone with the ability to challenge this in court. Because it should not. Many Kenyans of goodwill do not. Constitutionality means that the process needs to have integrity, and at this point the process did not have integrity.
It's not an event, it's a process.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was a farce to begin with, and I would challenge us to challenge it in any way we know how. But also challenge our members of parliament. Members of parliament talked about actually opposing it. They should boycott parliament. They should actually have their voices known tomorrow and the days after.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your final comments and telling us if there's a possibility of challenging the act right now.
Challenging it is very possible. At any point, you can challenge the act. And the issue is the process is very important. If you don't follow process, I don't want to talk about election. You remember they say it's not an event, it's a process. I won't talk about that. Let me just, because of time, let me give my closing remarks.
Right.
Being ambitious is a very good thing. What the government is doing is good. But you have to do it in a way that we see an impact on it. As a common Mwananchi, I have to see what I'm going to benefit from it. And we have to not forget one thing is Kenyans have to be deliberate and intentional about what is happening to them. If you're not intentional, you do not know. Because you are suffering. You can't be silent when you're suffering.
True.
Another thing is we have to be very deliberate and fight corruption, because some of these laws, as I've been trying to talk about it from different angles, are very good laws, as much as they are oppressive.
Right.
But if they're oppressive because of the kind of leadership we have, people are stealing left, right, and center. And if we are not very deliberate about fighting corruption, our prices will go up, because we have even to cushion those guys and that. So I'm just asking each and everyone to be very deliberate about it, to know about the law, to know about the implication that it puts on them. And I believe, as he said, Kenyans of goodwill, if we stand up, we'll have a better nation. But if we continue ranting on Twitter and just saying that bora uhai, we are going to continue suffering. Thank you very much.
All right, many thanks for coming and sharing your views on this particular matter. I appreciate your presence here. They have been my guest, Evans Soite. He's a lawyer, and Mariga Wangombe. Thank you so much for coming. Coming up next is Why Mashariki. DJ Tieska actually is very ready to begin this program. My name is Dereva Hilary. See you on Friday. Good night.